Thank you. Thank you very much. So, am I audible? Hello, good evening to everyone. So, today's topic is role of midodrine in orthostatic hypotension. So, without wasting any more time, I'm going into directly into the topic. So, basically, blood pressure is controlled by the blood pressure regulation is controlled or maintained by two factors. One is from the brain, and second is heart. So, we do have input from brain, that is from the higher brain function and from the sensory receptors to control several receptors, several chemical factors, and the output is basically to heart. The signals are to change the heart rate, to change stroke volume, and signals to kidneys to conserve fluids, to control the systemic and peripheral blood vessel regarding vasodilation as well as vasoconstriction. And this intertwined regulatory mechanism between this heart and brain ultimately controls, along with the supportive role of the total vascular system regarding the blood pressure and the heart rate. So basically, it's a good feedback mechanism with the baroreceptors and chemoreceptors, and the responses to increase blood pressure as well as responses to decrease blood pressure are controlled by these intertwined regulatory mechanisms to control a perfect blood pressure, to maintain autoregulation so that each and every organ can get the proper blood supply. Regarding hypertension, how low is hypertension? How low is low actually? We do have a lot of guidelines from ACC, ESC, even we do have our own Indian College of Cardiology guidelines. Basically, a normal blood pressure is 120 by 80, and when it is going below 90 by 60, we call it the hypertension. And with more lowering of the blood pressure, fatalities can happen. Etiological approach to hypertension can be basically categorized in two ways. One is from cardiac point of view, that is low output state, and second is vascular. In the vascular causes, we do have a systemic vasodilatation and obstructive causes. And in the low output state, we do have arrhythmic causes, structural heart diseases, along with reversible causes like hypovolemia, that includes hemorrhage, diarrhea, dehydration, and a lot of other factors. So, hypertension classification is a lot of factors that depends on reversible causes as well as irreversible causes. But today's topic is basically orthostatic hypertension or postural hypertension. This postural or orthostatic hypertension is a sudden drop in blood pressure when one stand up from a sitting position or if one stand up after lying down. We do have a particular definition regarding postural hypertension. So how do we define this orthostatic hypertension? The orthostatic hypertension can be defined as a sustained reduction of systolic blood pressure of at least 20 millimeter of mercury of or of diastolic blood pressure of at least 10 millimeter of mercury within 3 minutes of standing or head up tilt test to at least 60 degrees on a tilt table. There are several variations of this definition, but so far this is a standard guideline for diagnosis of orthostatic hypertension. However, in cases of hypertensive subjects whose baseline blood pressure is high, the cutoff of 30 millimeter of mercury fall in systolic blood pressure may be more appropriate. In several studies and guidelines, it has also been said that even after 3 minutes, even in 5 minutes can be considered for this consideration of diagnosis of orthostatic hypertension. Prevalence of orthostatic hypertension is no less. Several trials, several studies have indicated that the prevalence of overall orthostatic hypertension is between 3 to 17%. In the general population, it basically increases with age, and it has been seen the more prevalent after 65 years of age. It has been also seen that this prevalence is much more in a diabetic population, be it type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes. We do have a ERIC study which included more than 15,000 patients and adults of 45 to 64 years of age. And there they have shown the prevalence of almost 5%. So prevalence of orthostatic hypertension basically more common in elderly population, maybe because of frequent use of several antihypertensive medications and with aging, certain changes in the cardiovascular regulatory mechanism. More than 65 years of age has been seen to be associated with more prevalence of this orthostatic hypertension, which ultimately lead to more cardiovascular morbidities in terms of heart failure, stroke, and these drugs frequently associated with orthostatic hypertension a lot, but to name it like vasodilators like nitrates, certain CCB, even diuretics, along with ACE inhibitors, certain tricyclic antidepressant, opiates, and of course the use of alcohol. So it has been seen that orthostatic related hospitalization is much more in a elderly populations, and the rate can be as high as 233 per 1 lakh patients more than 75 years of age. Although the overall mortality is less than 1%, but the morbidities and the impact of frequent fall is quite high. This is one chart which has been showing that the prevalence of orthostatic hypertension in certain settings, be it in a nursing home, outpatients in the geriatric group, and overall you can see that prevalence column is showing that more than 10% in most of the patients uh, who are more than 65 years of age. So basically, with age after 65 years, the orthostatic hypertension increases. Now, coming to the types of orthostatic hypertension, it can be categorized based on duration. First of all, is a classical orthostatic hypertension. It can be defined as a sustained reduction of at least 20 millimeter mercury of SBP or 10 millimeter of DBP within 3 minutes of standing or a head up tilt up testing. Delayed response may occur even after 3 minutes, as I was initially talking about. And another is initial or immediate orthostatic hypertension. This term was coined in 2018 when the study showed that yes, orthostatic hypertension may also happen very uh, with a very urgency of almost 15 seconds of standing from supine position. So apart from this, it can also be categorized basically on the causation from the etiological point. It may be a neurogenic orthostatic hypertension and it may be a non-neurogenic orthostatic hypertension. So neurogenic hypertension, orthostatic hypertension is basically rare and usually chronic in nature, whereas non-neurogenic we do have several variable factors that includes hypovolemic factors, some endocrinal causes, physical deconditioning, and of course certain drug induced. So non-neurogenic and neurogenic have some basic parameter by which we can categorize even the bedside. One of the important factors is increase in heart rate on standing, which is pronounced in case of non-neurogenic, however mild or absent in neurogenic. And other symptoms of autonomic failure may accompany in case of neurogenic orthostatic hypertension, like urinary abnormalities, sweating abnormalities, erectile dysfunction in men, like this. So pathophysiology of coming to orthostatic hypertension. Basically, which is a consequence of failure of human circulatory system and neural pathways to maintain blood pressure on standing. Mechanism is several factors. First of all is decreased blood volume, secondary to intravascular volume loss, failed carotid sinus baroreflex activation, secondary to normal aging process, arteriosclerosis, and loss of sympathetic output as a consequence of neuropathies, and of course certain drugs that I've already mentioned. So when you are going from supine to standing position, it invokes a gravitational force to pull 500 to 1000 ml of blood into the lower extremities. And this rapid decrease in both venous return and ventricular filling causing transient reduction in cardiac output and blood pressure. This transient fall in blood pressure and cardiac output rapidly triggers cardiopulmonary, carotid sinus, aortic arch baroreceptors, ultimately resulting in increase in sympathetic tone and decrease in parasympathetic tone. So these normal baroreflex responses cause an increase in heart rate and vascular resistance, restoring the normal blood pressure, cardiac output, and cerebral perfusion. So basically, orthostatic hypertension is a consequence of failure of this human circulatory system and neural pathways to maintain this blood pressure on standing. And ultimately, this orthostatic hypertension, this regulatory process which fails to control the blood pressure increases with age, chronic diseases, and medication. With advancing of age, the vascular stiffness increases, baroreflex sensitivity diminishes, and beta adrenoreceptor mediated responses also decreases. So these are also an important factor why these more than 65 years of age, more than 75 years of age populations are more prone to develop orthostatic hypertension. Aging itself is associated with these factors. Apart from aging itself, acute illness, several number of medications, types of medications, hypertension itself, diabetes, smoking, and carotid artery stenosis may also give rise to more prevalence of orthostatic hypertension. Coming to causes of orthostatic hypertension, I've already said it that basically it can be categorized into neurogenic and non-neurogenic. In the non-neurogenic factors, the most important reversible is drug-induced, and second important is hypovolemic factors. Apart from that, we do have a lot of organic heart disease, inherent myopathies, arrhythmic disorders. So these all may give rise to development of orthostatic hypertension. What is the problem with orthostatic hypertension? Why we are so much worried about orthostatic hypertension? The effects of orthostatic hypertension has been seen with increased morbidity, particularly syncope and falls, incident coronary artery disease, stroke, and heart failure. So basically, it's a common reason or contributor to hospitalization in elderly patients. Regarding morbidities and mortality, we do have several studies which have shown that increased mortality in several meta-analyses and several trials, more common in older population, increased frequencies of falls and burden, and it has its own impact in terms of hospitalization and other factors. It also poses a huge physical as well as financial burden, which ultimately adversely affect their quality of life, cause a lost sense of independence, drastically change their lives. So more falls, impaired activities of daily living, diminished health-related quality of life. This is the most important factors. And cardiovascular disease cascade and this relation of orthostatic hypertension is basically a vicious cycle of heart failure, arrhythmia, myocardial infarction, arteriosclerosis, abnormal BP response, non-compliance to medications, and ultimately increased cardiovascular death. Outcomes of orthostatic hypertension and all-cause mortality has been studied in several studies, and ultimately, in almost all the studies, it has been seen to be associated with increased heart failure-related hospitalization, increased risk of stroke, increased risk of incident coronary artery disease, and overall all-cause mortality. However, most of the studies actually included 45 to 75 years of age in their study, and it has been seen that with more ages, this complication, morbidity, mortality actually increased. So orthostatic hypertension has its impact in diabetic patients also. In patients who are type 1 diabetic or type 2 diabetic, it has been seen that the macrovascular, microvascular complications, apart from cardiovascular disease itself, also increases with orthostatic hypertension. OH was positively associated with prevalence of myocardial infarction in type 1 DM and the prevalence of stroke in type 2 DM. And there was a strong association of OH and the prevalence of peripheral arterial disease as well. So basically, macrovascular, microvascular, be it retinopathy, nephropathy, peripheral neuropathy, all are found to be increased with a statistically significant p-value and when it comes to diabetic patients and occurrence of orthostatic hypertension. So these are all about orthostatic hypertension, its causes, its effects, and why we are so much worried about orthostatic hypertension. So how can you diagnose orthostatic hypertension? Basically, symptoms of orthostatic hypertension like lightheadedness, syncope, fatigue, fall, visual blurring, cognitive impairment, dyspnea in upward position, all these factors along with the objective parameter of low blood pressure. I have already said about the definition, so you have to follow this. For diagnosis of orthostatic hypertension, you need to diagnose orthostatic hypertension when the patient has a BP drop of systolic blood pressure 20 millimeter of mercury or more and diastolic blood pressure of 20 millimeter of 10 millimeter of mercury or more within 3 minutes of standing or head up tilt test is indicative of orthostatic hypertension. This is basically non-neurogenic. In case of neurogenic, there may be increase in heart rate also, and that may help you to categorize between these two classification of orthostatic hypertension. There may be some additional diagnostic tools which can be helpful when you are not certain about these things. And for this, the basic history taking, the medication chart, ECG, without any other invasive parameters, 24-hour ambulatory BP monitoring, and ultimately autonomic function testing may be helpful. So, orthostatic hypertension can be diagnosed with this combination of symptoms as well as objective parameter of BP recording. At the same time, you need to exclude other organic causes which must be causing hypertension, and autonomic testing may be required if you are thinking about certain neurological disorders, Parkinson or Parkinson plus like disease. And at the end, you should be able to diagnose based on these things. In some studies, orthostatic hypertension has been categorized from grade 1 to grade 4. It is a little bit controversial, but overall, if you're having much more fall in the blood pressure within a very short period of time, basically the disease is much more severe in nature. So coming to management of orthostatic hypertension. So basically, from the etiological point of view, if it is neurological, go for the proper evaluation. If it is non-neurological, go for the reversible causes like the medication and the hypovolemic factors. You should be diligent about each and every aspect. The first is the modification of patient's medications. Review of patient's medication is very important factor. Those drugs which can cause, if it is not uh, possible to continue, then you have to be very much careful to reduce the doses because these drugs are very much important to control the patients actually suffering from the disease. Discontinuation, if can be possible, should be done, but if it is not possible, should be tried with the replacement of a different category. If it is still not possible, then you have to go for other non-pharmacological intervention like rapid intake of fluids. However, in some group of patients, like patients suffering from heart failure, we should be cautious about giving overhydration. Avoiding of triggering situations like rapid standing up, standing motionless, hot environments should be avoided. Physical conditioning is very much important factor. Physical counter pressure maneuvers and head up tilt during sleeping is important. Elastic stockings and abdominal binding has been found to be useful in some studies. But even after that, in a large number of patients, we are still not able to control the symptoms of orthostatic hypertension. Sometimes it is not possible to discontinue, even to lower the doses of some drugs uh, which are actually causing orthostatic hypertension. And here comes the role of pharmacological intervention. As recommended drugs, we do have some drugs which are useful in orthostatic hypertension. To start with, midodrine, droxidopa. The role of these drugs are very useful. And treatment algorithm for this orthostatic hypertension is like this. That even after this non-pharmacological mechanism, non-pharmacological maneuvers, as a first-line sympathomimetic agents, midodrine or droxidopa can be used. And after that, add agents to increase the central backbone like fludrocortisone, vasopressin analog, and the second like anti-hypertensive drug like pyridostigmine, atomoxetine, which has not been categorized as a first line, can be used. So, what are the guideline recommendations for treatment of orthostatic hypertension? In 2017, ACCH and HRS guideline says that the midodrine can be beneficial in patients with syncope due to neurogenic orthostatic hypertension. Midodrine improves symptoms of OH in patients with neurogenic OH. There is a dose-dependent effect, usually corresponding to an increase in standing blood pressure. Its use may be limited by supine hypertension, and other common side effects include scalp tingling, pylorexia, and urinary retention. And therefore, it has got a class 2 recommendation. So therefore, midodrine is a very beneficial drug, and it is a first-line drug for treatment of orthostatic hypertension. What the ESC says, 2018 ESC guideline says that explanation of the diagnosis, use of adequate hydration, modification, discontinuation of the drugs, these are definitely the first. However, as a pharmacological intervention, midodrine should be considered if symptoms persist. That is also a class 2 level of evidence B. It's a recommendation from the European Society of Cardiology. So midodrine has been found to be very much important, very much useful to controlling orthostatic hypertension. It has been clearly categorized in all the guidelines. Quality of evidence regarding several such maneuvers has been studied, starting from abdominal binder, sodium intake, hydration, And if you see this chart, then you can see that the midodrine has a very high quality of evidence for reduction of BP drop. This has been highlighted in red color. And apart from that, these all are moderate, low, very low. But midodrine has got a very high quality of evidence of reduction in blood pressure drop. However, definitely it has some side effects. You have to be cautious about this. And that's where actually I'm going to discuss a little bit of midodrine, which is the main topic today. So coming to first, action and clinical pharmacology. So what is midodrine? Basically, it's a prodrug. Therapeutic effect of orally administered midodrine is due to and directly related to its conversion after absorption to basically deglycination occurs and desglyminoglycine, which differs chemically from methoxamine only by lacking in a methyl group on alpha carbon of side chain. This desglyminoglycine is an alpha-1 adrenoceptor stimulant with little effect on cardiac beta adrenoceptor. That's a very important pharmacokinetics. This action of this prodrug on cardiovascular and other organ systems are essentially identical with those of other alpha-1 adrenoceptor stimulants such as phenylephrine or methoxamine. Regarding bioavailability, mean absolute bioavailability of 93%. Tmax 20 to 30 minutes. In case of active product, it is 1 hour. Plasma protein bounding, either midodrine nor midodrine is bound to plasma proteins to any significant effect. Helpful in case of dialysis. Metabolism, deglycination of midodrine to desglymidodrine takes place in many tissues and both compounds are metabolized part by the liver. 91% of the administered dose is excreted in the urine in 24 hours of the urinary material. 50 to 60% is present as the active product and approximately 2% as non-metabolized. T-half is zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.5 hours and of the active product is 3 hours. What are the contraindications of midodrine? Severe organic heart disease is a contraindication of midodrine. So please remember, if you have a structural significant organic heart disease, you should be cautious. You should not use. Apart from that, cerebrovascular occlusion, acute renal disease, severe renal insufficiency, prostate hypertrophy, proliferative diabetic retinopathy, pheochromocytoma, hyperthyroidism, narrow angle glaucoma. You should be very much aware of this before you are prescribing midodrine. So clinical indication and effectiveness of midodrine. It can be used, and we do have indications in case of orthostatic hypotension, neurogenic or non-neurogenic, chronic heart failure with orthostatic hypotension, elderly population with orthostatic hypertension, hemodialysis-induced hypertension, very useful drugs, hypertension in intensive care or short-acting antihypertensive agents, neurally mediated syncope, and hypertension due to autonomic neuropathy in diabetes. Shall be coming each of the topic. This is the study by Jackie et al. Published in 2009, which showed that the importance of midodrine in chronic heart failure patients in symptomatic hypertension. This study included the patients who were suffering from heart failure with LVEF of less than 35%, and midodrine at a dose of 5 mg orally every 6 hours and increased to a maximum of 10 mg was used, and it showed that it had a significant increase in blood pressure and improvement in functional class, and a higher percentage of patients were on optimal heart failure therapy. That is a very important factor because most of the patients were suffering from heart failure due to drug effects. Sometimes in that whole tenure suffer from orthostatic hypertension. In that scenario, midodrine can be very useful. Second issue, second issue is elderly patients with symptomatic hypertension. This study was also published in European Geriatric Medicine in 2012, which showed that the safety and tolerability of midodrine in the management of symptomatic orthostatic hypertension who has a mixed carotid sinus syndrome. And this study included almost 97 subjects, and which showed a significant improvement in the incidence of orthostatic hypertension. Hemodialysis-induced hypertension is an important factor in patients who are undergoing hemodialysis, and sometimes it poses a problem. And it has been shown to affect almost 20% of the individuals who patients who are suffering from this disorder can be given midodrine. This was the study which was published in Journal of Kidney Disease, and it showed that the single dose of midodrine before hemodialysis appears to be an effective and well-tolerated therapy. In patients in ICU patients who we do have a lot of data which showed a significant decrease in the number of patients on vasopressor 24 hours after initiation of midodrine, and these had achieved a statistical significant value. There was a significant decrease in the median cumulative acid pressure dose and a significant increase in median mean arterial pressure 24 hours after initiation of midodrine. Midodrine has been found also useful in neurally mediated syncope. This study was published in Annals of Neurology in 2002, which showed that the midodrine significantly improved orthostatic hypotension 1 hour after administration of subjects with recurrent neurally mediated syncope. Lastly, autonomic neuropathy in diabetic patients. This was an important study published in World Journal of Diabetes in 2018, and it showed that the in all stages of autonomic neuropathy, basically midodrine is a wonderful drug. And according to IDA 2017, treatment of neurogenic orthostatic hypotension and administration of symptomatic medication is central to the care of patients whose symptoms are not controlled with other measures. Midodrine should be titrated gradually to efficacious doses, and sympathomimetic drugs like midodrine are the first-line medicines in the treatment of patients in this group of diabetic patients who are suffering from autonomic neuropathy and happens to be suffering from orthostatic hypotension. So, midodrine in neurogenic orthostatic hypotension has established its an important role, that is based on several studies. It has shown its tolerability, effectability, as well as a less side effect profile. So to conclude, the take-home messages is that the midodrine has been shown to increase blood pressure and vascular tone and to reduce the frequency and severity of syncope in patients with orthostatic hypotension. Safety is well established with phase 4 placebo-controlled randomized study and from several meta-analyses. According to systematic review analysis of several trials, midodrine has shown significant improvement in quality of life, reduction in syncopic events, and clinical outcomes in cases with orthostatic hypertension and recurrent reflex syndrome. There are strong evidence on blood pressure reducing effect with midodrine compared to other pharmacological intervention in treatment of neurogenic OH, and in treatment of orthostatic hypertension. Midodrine has a class 2A recommendation in ESC guideline 2018 as well as ACC/AHA HRS guideline 2017. Midodrine has been effective in management of orthostatic hypertension even due to spinal cord injury with refractory to classic treatment intervention. Duration of action is around 4 hours, which coincides with the standard recommendation of using sympathomimetic drugs, that is at least 4 hours before bedtime. And the fear of fall injury among elderly patients are the highest, and these patients should be prescribed midodrine whenever the particular clinical indication arises. With this, I conclude this session, and thank you very much. And even if you have any questions, you can ask me. Thank you.